Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. Guys, you're in for a real treat because we have my buddy Winston Marshall here. Winston was very famously kicked out of Mumford and Sons, a band I still have never heard. And now you have your own podcast, it's true. You have your own podcast, Marshall Matters, and you very recently debated Nancy Pelosi, which we're going to get into how that ended up happening, how the mighty have fallen, my goodness, and wipe the floor with her. The clip has gone viral. It's in the show description if you want to check it out, which I highly recommend. Winston, so you came to Austin. We got on like gangbusters, which is an expression I don't know if you have over there, but it's a positive thing. And one of the things I liked about you, and I think the Trigonometry guys and a few others, is that we disagree on a lot, but our views are a Venn diagram. So when you were saying things that I didn't agree with, it's like, hold on a minute, let me think through what this guy's saying, as opposed to with most people just dismissing them as having nothing of value to add. So Winston, I have a new form of trolling, which I'm going to do with you right now. And this form of trolling is to give people sincere compliments. And since they don't know how to accept them, they get very uncomfortable, and it amuses me and the audience. And here we go. What's that?
It's even worse for the English.
Yes. That's what makes us
compliments, don't they? Americans, it's like, yes, I am.
What's this?
It's like Popeye, like,
yeah.
I like all those compliments. Anyway, sorry. No, actually, I'll have some compliments. Yes.
So I'm a Brooklyn hipster.
Can I correct something?
Please.
Maybe we'll get into. I wasn't actually kicked out of the band. I quit, but that's a detail. But anyway.
Sure. Okay, we could talk about that. That's fair. That's it was a very publicly acrimonious split. Let's put it that way.
Fair.
And thank you for that correction, guys. That is a big deal, to be honest. So the compliment is as follows. I'm a Brooklyn hipster. And for people who don't know what hipsterism is this idea that, because back in the day, they were artistic kids who were poor, so they would go to thrift stores and get old clothes and wear them. And this was supposed to be fashionable. It is also a function of being broke and wanting to look different. But broadly speaking, hipsterism is finding something, clothing, a brand of candy, a book that has been discarded or has fallen to disrepute, and saying, wait a minute, this thing still has value. This thing is something that should be beloved. Let's reevaluate this, and bringing it back to public consciousness. And you are one of the main people who did this with the banjo. So the banjo, not that long ago, is this kind of, in America's deliverance, hillbilly, trashy, almost like a joke, but now it's gotten a bit of a renaissance. And you've been instrumental, no pun intended, in doing this. So first of all, thank you, because I think that's amazing when someone takes something that's been discarded and be like, hold on a second, this is great. And I want to hear why the banjo is something that you kind of fell in love with, and what it means to you.
I won't take the credit, but because we're friends, I'm gonna try this sort of theory I'm working out about what happened sort of 2008 to 2012, because it wasn't just our band, Mumford and Sons.
Oh, sure, yeah, I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying you're.
But let me, because you've got a theory about what it is to be a hipster, right? Now, if your listeners, and you'll remember, back around that period, basically 2008 to 2012, 13, there was a whole resurgence, not just of folk music as a folk revival. There were bands like Avett Brothers, Okra Melon Show, Lumineers. The acoustic instruments were back in the charts, which is kind of bizarre. But not only that, suddenly everyone was wearing a beard. Suddenly men were wearing plaid shirts and denim overalls, as you say, or dungarees, as we say. And I don't know if that was hipster or whatever it might have.
It was.
Maybe that is by your definition, but there was a whole movement and a period of time. And I think that I came along at the right period of time. Now, I had my own personal interest with the banjo. I loved it. I was obsessed with the music. That went back really to the Oh Brother, Out Thou film, which was released in 2001, I think. I had my own personal love of folk music and bluegrass and country and mountain and Appalachian music. But what happened, our band, which formed at the end of 2007, then you have the 2008 crash. And this is my theory. We have the 2008 crash. The first American tour I did was in September 2008, which is exactly when Lehman collapsed. And I don't think that's a total, well, it's obviously a coincidence, but But what happened after is that there was, I think, there's a society-wide desire for real things and a movement away from synthetic things towards real things. And so I sort of see it a little bit like that. Why is it that there was this widespread popular appeal of rootsy, acoustic, folk, callback music to Dust Bowl, and I think it's something to do with I don't know, maybe something under the surface, that we were not happy with the system as a society. We weren't happy with what had happened, and we wanted something more organic, more real. That I'm
Hold
playing
on.
around with this
No, but let me
theory.
push back on this
Yeah,
because I
push back.
think what you're might be missing, or maybe I'm wrong, is that period right before that was the period of electroclash. So right before that, you had the bands in Brooklyn who had the beards, were playing instruments, also very heavily synthetic, throwbacks to New Order and early '80s, if not even late '70s. So I think this folk revival was in many ways a response to that overly produced, overly electronic. Let's go back to basic and make music that sounds like music as opposed to music that sounds like robots.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe it's as simple as just these music movements are cyclical around themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't deny that that's obviously there's something in that, but I can't help but think that culture is. I don't, that people often say culture is down. Oh, sorry, politics is downstream from culture. I think that's bullshit.
Yes.
I think politics and culture are downstream from tech, and
Oh,
so the technological changes happen, and then downstream from that, the culture and politics changes as a consequence. So yes, there's a kind of surface level. Oh, music's a, humans like culture, they like change. There's something going on there, but I can't help but it's kind of mental how, if you remember how big that kind of music got.
yeah.
In fact, it would be when I started playing the banjo, people laughed at the idea that it would even be played on the radio. Whereas now,
Yes.
the last time before my banjo was played on the radio was probably Dexy's Midnight Runner. So
Right.
there was a long period where it was, what, banjo on the radio? You being ridiculous. So I don't think it's as simple as that. I think there's got to be something. I don't know what it is. I'm searching in the dark for this kind of theory here, and there's so many things at play. But I can't help but think that there was something, given how big the movement was, that there's something more in society going on.
But let's talk about that specifically. Why was it that, like you said, the idea of the banjo on the radio is a joke. The banjo's kind of ridiculous, and then it became, revered and beloved. So what is how'd you come upon the banjo, and why is it something that you've kind of gravitated toward?
For me personally, it was a combination of two things. It was firstly, "Oh Brother, Art Thou" soundtrack, which was done by the T-Bone Burnett for the Coen Brothers film. On that record, you have Alison Krauss, you have Gillian Welch, you have a bunch of artists from all types of from trad country to blues, and everything in between. It was kind of like a best of, and it's a beautiful record. The famous song your listeners remember is "Man of Constant Sorrow," sung by Dan Tyminski, and that record had a profound effect on me. Growing up in London, I'd never seen or heard banjo, so it wasn't something that was part of my culture. I was playing in rock and roll bands. That was what I liked. I liked ZZ Top and Audioslave and Rage Against the Machine, and I was actually in a ZZ Top cover band called Gobbler's Knob, named after the Groundhog Day. That was my first band, and then a series of.
Hold on, hold on. Can we pause and just look at the beauty of that sentence? I was in a ZZ Top cover band named Gobbler's Knob.
But
That
I know
should be
there's
your
no correlation, but it's
no,
kind of
but that should be your Twitter bio.
like.
Just that sentence.
It's kind of even more bizarre if you think member of Gobbler's Knob debates Pelosi. The
Yeah.
whole thing is so surreal. A
So
career that started in a cover band for Gobbler's Knob ends debating Pelosi at the Oxford
Well,
Union.
I
And I
mean, in a way,
can
she
tell
many people consider her to be her husband's beard, so it's perfectly appropriate.
Well, there you go.
So
Um,
please go on.
but banjo for me, I loved American style banjo and American music. I loved things like Dylan, and I was a big Led Zeppelin, Beatles, obviously British. We had our British version always superior, but the songwriters were always better in America. But anyway, maybe that's a whole other kettle of another debate to have. But I was playing in rock and roll bands, and then wanted to do it more seriously. And everyone was a guitar player. I did love the banjo. What was the great thing about banjo is very little job competition. So if you needed a banjo, I could be the guy. So just even owning a banjo meant that you had opportunities. There's a good story about Ozzy Osbourne, which is that when Black Sabbath were auditioning for the band before, when they were starting out, they tried a bunch of singers, and the reason they chose Ozzy was because he was the only one who had a microphone and an amp, because they all had playing so loud, none of the other
Yeah.
singers could be heard. So he didn't get the job because he was the best singer, although he's an unbelievable singer. He got it because he had all the gear, and that's kind
All
of like
right.
me.
Oh, okay. Folks, warmer, sunnier days are calling, so fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, that's the one I got, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved. They're ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? They've got over 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. You'll always have new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious. From breakfast to dessert, you can stay fueled with easy, nutritious options, and you can treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, no cleaning up. It's effortless support for your lifestyle, and choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. They sent me a bunch to try, and they were really easy to prepare and to consume, and now they're inside of me. Head to factormeals.com/yourwelcome50, YOUR, and use code yourwelcome50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code yourwelcome50, YOUR welcome50 at factormeals.com/yourwelcome50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Let's get back to the show. Um, I do. Let's talk a bit about the. So you've talked about many times the fallout with between Mumford and Sons, and briefly you had posted on Instagram that you're reading Andy No's book. This became a huge brouhaha. Uh, I had two big questions about this. The first one is, do you think this sort of thing would have happened in 2024?
That's a really good question. Actually, Piers asked me that same question. I just did his show, and so there's two things. Like,
Oh
firstly,
God, I should just kill myself. I'm asking Piers
you
questions now.
great
Oh, good
great minds
Lord.
think alike, Michael. 2021. It's not only is there the hysteria of BLM, but there's the hysteria associated with the fact that the entire world had been locked up, or locked
Yeah,
down, I should say, technically, in their homes and glued to their phones, and had their lives have been torn apart. That it was a terrible time, and so just on that level, and of course, it was also, well, I guess my incident with the book happened in March 2021, so that is after Biden comes to be president. But even before that, you also think there's Trump derangement syndrome en masse in America, but also in Britain and Europe. So I think you're right. There was this perfect storm of just mania, worldwide mania, that meant that things like that would happen, which I'm really not sure that they would happen today. I think that there's another aspect at play, which is that in the music industry, BLM was a doctrine or a religion that you could not criticize.
right.
Every band was made to post a black square on Black Square Tuesday or whatever it was in June 2020, If you didn't post a black square, you'd basically that would be deemed that you were against the movement.
Yes.
There's an I can't remember
And
the
pro-racism.
pardon.
And pro-racism, not just broadly against the movement, but pro-racism. That's how you would be deemed.
Exactly. Um, Black lives don't matter. Then is the
Right? Yeah,
assumption.
yeah.
Now, it so happened actually that by that long before then, I'd read all the BLM literature, whereas Patrice Carn-Culler's or Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I was very familiar with that ideology um, before what happened after George Floyd. But then what happened to George Floyd was, and this has been memory hold, you have 19 people were killed in the first 14 days of the BLM riots. Unbelievable amount of damage, not least to black businesses. As I brought up in my debate with Madam Pelosi, the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon was under siege. You can see footage of this if you find it online on YouTube. You can see they were throwing fireworks and trying to burn down the federal courthouse whilst officers were inside. So it was a literal insurrection. And meanwhile, the creative industries, if you remember, were putting out fundraisers on their social media to try and bail out any of the protesters that had been arrested. So the support for that movement, not just BLM but Antifa, but a slightly different thing, was completely fanatical. You could not criticize it. So rather naively, me posting that book, that's and there's important details. I only had 3,000 followers. It's kind of, I see it as an act of God. I don't understand how it blew up so quickly. And just for more context, by the end of the weekend, it was literally a segment on The View and Tucker. It was, maybe it's because it was a no news weekend. There's like, it's alchemy. There's like a mixture of all these things that happened at the same time that you couldn't quite believe that this really is a nothing story became so big. But the music industry certainly dogpiled. And if from their point of view, if you're anti-Antifa, you're pro-FAR. And so
Yeah,
there
but it's also
was this
you.
conversation about Antifa.
You weren't even saying Andy knows my homeboy. You're saying I'm reading this book.
I
So
said,
it's even crazier than
congratulations. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
it's even crazier than that. It's not even at all this idea that like these are my views and death to Antifa.
yeah, exactly. And okay, so then what happened was, I have told this story a lot, so your viewers may already be familiar with this, but then I issued an apology letter, which you'll appreciate this as a Soviet historian. For me, that over the coming months, that felt like a kind of a tablet of shame hanging around my
Oh
neck.
yeah.
Not least because, I mean, it's an exaggeration that you see those scenes from this communist China with the dunce hats. It still
Yes.
felt like that over time. But I did issue it myself because I accepted that maybe I didn't know everything, and my business partners, as you might say, or band partners, to be more, normal talk, were getting attacked by it, and they were very upset. So I didn't want them to be upset and hurt. So I issued this apology, and then over the coming months, well, a few things happened. I looked into it deeply, and
Wait, let me interrupt you because you said something that I think I have to add because you brought up the Soviet thing. In Russian culture, which I was raised in to some extent, we spoke Russian at home. To throw your own people publicly under the bus, maybe it's because of the years where this was forced to be done, like under Stalin and all that, is basically one step. I'm not exaggerating at all. And if you ask any Russian, they'll tell you this. I'm not exaggerating. This is going to sound like I'm being over the top. Is basically one step removed from being a pedophile. Like it's as low as a man can get when his boy is being savaged, and behind the scenes he's not strategizing about, all right, how do we stand up to this? To just kind of sit there and pile in is it's just absolutely almost like subhuman in that society.
well,
So I
my interesting counter to that, Michael, is that there's a famous story, and I haven't got it off the top of my head, but you'll remember maybe, of the young guy who rats out his dad to
Pavlik Morozov, yes.
yes. And isn't there a statue for him?
So this is, I talk about this in the White Pill. This is a fairy tale. There's some truth to it, but they made a myth about it. Where basically this dad, I don't remember what the story changes, or I don't remember the specifics. The dad was like hoarding grain. He wanted food for his family. Maybe he was going to be a speculator. Who knows? The son calls the cops on him, and his family kills him. And the school children in Russia are told this is like a role model. So if you see your parents doing anything wrong, you call the cops on them, even if it costs you your life. That was the idea. But
Mm,
the idea didn't take, or it did take with some people, but with others, it's like this is, they understood correctly. This is the complete evil laid bare without any ambiguity.
mm. Well, then to play off that, and this is relevant to the story. There was two parts of Solzhenitsyn literature that were also very key to my personal story at that point. First and foremost was his essay "Live Not by Lies," which he published in
Yes.
1974 when he was expelled from Moscow. And it's about 5 pages long, and your listeners should read this incredible piece of work. But there's a paragraph which says, "How dare some, amongst other things, but I'll paraphrase: How dare you consider yourself or call yourself a people's artists if you're not prepared to live by the truth or
Yeah.
sacrifice for the truth?" That, I think I read that essay 4 or 5 times in that period. I couldn't. It was like it really was massively affecting my consciousness. This, because of this apology, does that, as a musician or whatever I wanted to do, would be undermined because I had apologized for something, or accept apologized for criticizing Antifa and BLM. And that's how I saw it. There's another piece of Solzhenitsyn literature that's important, which is actually, I think it's either in volume 1 or volume 2 of the Archipelago, which is about, if telling the truth hurts the people you love, think very carefully about it, which I really appreciated from Solzhenitsyn, because at first, on surface level, you might think Solzhenitsyn's all about the truth and standing up to power and live not by lies, etc. But that is a really important caveat, because I think that firstly it explains a bit of why the Soviet regime is so successful, but it also well it I think there's good sometimes when people apologize or people make sacrifices for their career, family, that then there are noble reasons why one would do that. Like, it's hard to build a career. It's hard to support a family. It's, if you have mortgages and you're threatened, you see this, we saw this mainly in universities across America. Those things are noble things, and so when you're like, it's like you have to make a decision there and then. You're not going to throw that away. You're going to try and protect all those things because those are great things. Anyway, Solzhenitsyn actually does say that in probably volume 1 of Archipelago, and that was really important to me, because that was the kind of situation I was in. For me to say the truth was hurting the band. That radio stations said they weren't going to be played. I was supposed to DJ at one festival. They just like got rid of me. It was like palpable that there was
Oh yeah.
punishment for wrongthink on this particular topic.
I'm thinking of story I heard about that happened in the 80s when Pablo Escobar and the narco-terroristas were basically running Colombia, yeah, as their own fiefdom. And there was a Colombian woman who came to the States, and she was lobbying, I think, Congress or the White House for help. And she's back in her hotel room, whatever it was. She gets a call, and the call says, "This is where your daughter was at 8 a.m. This is where she was at 9 a.m. This is where she was at 10 a.m." And they just gave her her child's itinerary back in Bogota, and she got her ass on that plane, because it's really easy for people who don't have much to lose to have integrity. But
Mm,
but if they start targeting your family, just very careful. Point being, in this case, um, they they could have done more. It seems to me very clear that their first instinct wasn't rally the troops. How do we fix this? We're not going to bend the knee, whatever. It was, all right, let's cast him into the wasteland and self-preservation. And I think it's very different when someone's life is in danger. as opposed to, hold on a second, this is can we wear, like, let's game this out. Is this going to be some kind of long-term thing? Is this kind of some, P. Diddy, there's video of you beating a woman in the hallway, or you had a stupid Instagram story where it's just like, congratulations on this book, and you apologized, moved on. So there's a band I know where the lead singer got Me Too to some extent, and it was very clear it was just kind of voluntary, and he had to leave the band for a minute, but he rejoined them, and they're touring, and they're as strong as ever. And it's the kind of thing where it's just like, I listen, it's not me, but it just seemed very gross to me. But let's move on to something else, which is this. How the hell are you in a position, and she was asking herself this as well, that you're debating Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, quite. She was literally saying through my speech, "Who are you? Who are you? And why are you doing this?" When I read out one of the Trump's tweets, she did not like that at all. It's a good question. Well, I was invited about a month before. I was given a few options to debates that were on. One was environment. I can't actually remember the others, and one was populism. I couldn't do the populism one. I had other obligations for that date, but it was the one that I cared about the most. It's an issue I do care about a lot, and exactly what I say in the speech is my basic opinion. I didn't know who the opposition was, but they couldn't find anyone else. And so I'm the only one, apart from the students, for whom I think it was academic more than it was something they actually thought or cared about, because it's politically incorrect to defend populism. Now, I look forward to having a longer, deeper dive into populism with you, because I know our opinions differ, but I hope we can do that face to face. I think that's going to be a very nourishing and interesting journey. But when about a week before the speech, the debate, I learned that Nancy Pelosi was the opposition. And so, although I had a ballpark idea of what I wanted to do, that obviously changed things. I mean,
But
she
hold on, let me
was.
ask. Like, I don't understand. Like, they went to her and said, "Oi, Mrs. Speaker, do you want to debate the Banjo Boy?" And she's like, "Yes, this is a good use of my time." I don't understand this. I mean, no, listen, I'm very serious. She, she,
Hi, it's Kellyanne Conway.
And I'm David Plouffe, and we have some surprising news. We're teaming up for a brand new podcast, The Campaign Managers.
I know what you're thinking. Why would Plouffe and Kellyanne do this?
Because frankly, Kellyanne, we disagree on just about every issue, except about what it takes to win a presidential campaign. Kellyanne ran Donald Trump's campaign. I ran Barack Obama's campaign. We understand things like early vote. We understand how to leverage an opportunity and how to play defense when you've made a mistake.
2024 is an election like none other, and David Plouffe and I are going to take you behind the scenes like no one else can.
We're going to lean into our one-of-a-kind experiences, really educate our listeners about what to keep an eye on, and discuss the current strategies and tactics that both campaigns are deploying on the campaign trail.
We're going to disagree, we're going to dissent, but we're going to deliver. You won't want to miss this unique pairing. Join us by listening to The Campaign Managers with Kellyanne Conway and David Plouffe.
The first episode is out May 22nd, available wherever you get your podcasts.
she has a staff full of people ostensibly designed to make sure she never has to interact with garbage like you, right? Like, this is their job.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm saying. How did you slip between the cracks?
My insight into that is it's total hubris.
Oh, wow.
We had dinner before with her, the other speakers, the leaders of the student leaders of the Oxford Union, and actually I was sat next to her chief of staff. And so we got a sense into their worldview. Firstly, Pelosi had done maybe 4 big things that day. I think she'd met the mayor of London. She'd met various politicians. And before the debate, she'd also given some sort of keynote to the students. It was generally fawning. When she was walking up, well, actually, it's a bit mixed. When she was walking around the campus, there were people going like, "We love you, Pelosi." And in the room, I would say it was a very pro-Pelosi room. However, in her lecture before, and I don't know if this has been published, there were pro-Palestine interrupters who came up with a flag because of her position in that war, in that conflict. So it wasn't totally pro-Pelosi, but being for a brief moment next to her chief of staff, I got a glimpse into their worldview, which is that they were firstly they were using words like equity without any hesitation, things like the environment, the classic progressive dogma
Dog
about
whistles.
environment, which they hadn't
Yeah.
ever been challenged on. RFK came up, who I like RFK a lot, and RFK came up, and there was like this, whoa, what does he really want? And but the biggest thing was they really believe that to defend democracy, they have to do everything in their power to defeat Trump, including undermining democracy.
Well, because when they say democracy, they mean their hegemony. It's literally synonymous in their minds.
Exactly. But they're completely blind. It's not. Here's the other thing that's just to give it some sorts of Nixon style nuance. My impression actually from the dinner was that these were quite nice people. My impression, Pelosi did photographs of all the kids without hesitation. She did a photograph of me. She was very kind. She gave everyone her time. She's an 84-year-old woman. I was like, oh, she's actually behaving. Well, she's a stateswoman, so she's behaving but behaving properly. I didn't get the impression of airs particularly. I thought she was pretty nice. My insight is that they're just blind. I don't think they're like machinating or plotting.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on.
Am I wrong?
I remember I met George W. Bush's uncle, George H.W. Bush's brother, and I thought I was gonna, make a clown of him. I tell this story all the time. He ran the table on me. That guy charmed me effortlessly. I fell in love with him. These people know what they're doing. They know how to do it. Nancy Pelosi is the biggest plotter in DC. She is a complete gangster. You're probably not privy to this, but in 2008, Barack Obama got elected with a supermajority in both houses of Congress. So you had 60 Senate votes, which meant you could have cloture, which means you could shut down debate. You can't do a filibuster. Filibuster is an American technique where if you just keep talking, you can't advance the bill, then that's a way to kill legislation. You need 60 votes. That's had happened, I think, last 40 years ago. He had it. He had huge numbers in the House as well. And this bill, the Obamacare bill, became extremely unpopular. It birthed the Tea Party to the point where there was a vacancy in the Massachusetts Senate and a Republican got in, which was just unheard of. Massachusetts, a very deeply blue state. And everywhere, all the polls, we don't want this, we don't want this, we don't want this. And Nancy Pelosi was Speaker in the House, and she got on the phone, or she had them come down to her office, and all these Democratic Congress people who were like, if I vote for this, it's going to cost me my seat. She got them to do it. They voted for it, and they lost their seats. She made sure they were taken care of, or whatever it was. She promised them, and they fucking did it. So she is a brilliant plotter. I don't know any Republican who denies the fact that this woman is a brilliant strategist, and she's just basically a gangster.
I would accept that. Right, I'm not going to push back against that. Let me re-articulate myself. I don't think that she has actually tried to engage with people of a different opinion. Let's say,
oh, of course, yes,
the worldview that I presented. So it's not like she knows what the other side are and she's acting against that. It's more like she is so sure and it's arrogance. She's so sure of what she perceives to be right that she's charging ahead with that without blinking, which is why when I challenge her narrative on Jan 6th in the speech, she goes, why are you doing this? She can't even understand why someone would, because the ultimate evil is defeating Trump, who is the end, who is la 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 la. So that if that's the ultimate evil, that anyone would even try and add nuance or try and like pick apart what's going on, really, that is an offense to her. Instead of that being normal, like, of course, in normal conversation when no one has anything to lose, of course, let's try and analyze what really happened so that we can all grow together and push towards the truth. So now I'm not trying to make a defense of Pelosi. I'm just trying to paint a picture of the impression I got.
Sure. But she's not interested in truth. She's interested in using truth only insofar as it furthers her agenda and her power. And in a sense, that's almost admirable. Like there's just complete power hungriness, and truth or falsity is secondary to that. Let me ask this before we move on. There's this kind of idea that some people have that when they're in their hospital bed and they're on their last legs and the Grim Reaper comes into the door, you have these kind of little negotiations like, can I have another more week? Can I call my son? Blah, blah, blah. Is that what it felt like talking to her, like having a debate with the Grim Reaper?
My feeling was I had no idea. There's a lot of things going on in the background. Like, first of all, I've never given any type of political speech like that. Secondly, I'm not that familiar. I'm Pelosi. I'm England. I'm English and I live in England.
I'm England.
I am England. I'm England. There was so Pelosi, obviously I know who she is.
My king wants to be a tampon.
Oh, that's another national embarrassment.
Yes.
So Pelosi is not, it's not. She's not in the British media as nearly as she is in the. She's not in the British imagination to the same degree she is in the American imagination. What I didn't know going into is what position she would take in the debate. I thought, best case scenario, she is going into the Oxford debate, so she knows this is serious. She's aware that they have a big YouTube channel, and she's aware that a good Oxford debate will be remembered in history. A famous example is Malcolm X's famous Oxford Union debate, where he makes the case for political for using violence when necessary in certain incidences in society. Just before he died, I think. So there are famous Oxford Union debates and speeches, and yes. I thought her team would have said, "This is a big deal. Write a speech, or have someone write the speech."
Right. Yes.
And I also thought she might have a robust argument, because there are robust arguments against my position. There are robust arguments, obviously, against populism. And robust arguments that populism is a threat to democracy. I thought she might have taken that route. What was clear was that she took the complete opposite, was the cliched version of the anti-populist position. She took the Hillary Clinton basket of deplorables stance. I was actually quite shocked that she would do that, she's completely unreconstructed elite. She said ethno-nationalist 5 times, which, by the way, is exactly the same as alt-right or racist. They just gave up on those words because those words have lost all meaning because they've been abused beyond belief, beyond recognition. She said ethno-nationalist. She said this. She made up a word. She said ethnic negativity because she couldn't bring, like, what the fuck is that? Because you can't say racist. She took that cliche position. It's a total ramble. And clearly completely unprepared. That was what surprised me. I thought I might have some tougher opposition.
Well, so were you nervous at all?
I was praying beforehand. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So let's break this down, because you're staring into her face. You're reading her down. When she was finished, you must have been like, I did a book with the UFC champion Matt Hughes, and he fought Royce Gracie, and we watched the DVDs, and he did the play-by-play. And Royce was this legendary fighter who put MMA on the map, who put Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the map, the Gracie family, and he'd never been defeated before, right? So there was this one point in the match where Matt's the first person to defeat him, and Matt had him in a hold, and Matt pauses because Matt thought, he's going to do some move I've never seen before or since, and turn me into like a leprechaun and just destroy me. And he's like, it feels like I got him, but like, this is Royce Gracie. And then he's like, oh, he's got nothing. And it was this weird, like, kind of like mind fuck for him. So when she sat down, maybe you're not that familiar with her. You still know she's a prominent personality. She's, she's not.
No, I done my research.
Yeah. She's no mandolin player or whatever. and then she sits down and you're like, you what, mate? Like, it's like, is that it?
Yeah, I'll tell you some mistakes I made, which is the smart thing for her to have done, even regardless of the terrible speech she gave, would be to not react to me.
Yeah.
Because in reacting to me, that added to the virality of the video, because she was creating drama. If the second thing I would have advised her is just don't react, like just take it cold, like pretend you're not even listening, because then it might have killed the video. It certainly would have made it less impactful. The mistake I made was I had thought that that's what her reaction would be, that she would be chill, because
Right.
that's the smart thing to do, is don't react, like, just keep stone faced. Her reaction to it, what I didn't anticipate is that she would react. And so I didn't think about what my reaction to her reaction should be, or the different ways she could have reacted, what I would have said, because I just didn't anticipate that, which was a mistake on my behalf for sure.
Folks, Homes.com knows that when it comes to home shopping, it's never just about the house or condo. It's about the home. And what makes a home is more than just the house or property. It's the location and the neighborhood. If you have kids, it's also schools, nearby parks, transportation options. That's why Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in-depth information they need to find the right home. And when I say in-depth, I'm talking deep. Each listing features comprehensive information about the neighborhood, complete with a video guide. They also have details about local schools with test scores, state rankings, and student-to-teacher ratio. They even have an agent directory with the sales history of each agent. So when it comes to finding a home, not just a house, this is everything you need to know all in one place. Homes.com. We've done your homework. Hey folks, I want to talk to you about Bone Charge. They're a holistic wellness brand with a huge range of evidence-based products to optimize your life in every way. Founded in science, inspired by nature, all of Bone Charge's products adopt ancestral ways of living in our modern day world. Their extensive range of premium wellness products help you sleep better, perform better, more energy, recover faster, balance hormones, reduce inflammation. The list is endless. From blue light glasses to red light therapy, EMF management, and circadian-friendly lighting, Bone Charge products help you naturally address the issues of our modern-day way of life effortlessly and with maximum impact. Let's suppose you want to burn more calories to help with your weight. You know who you are. Maybe you want to detoxify. You're eating badly, you had a few drinks. Maybe you want to ease stress and unwind. Maybe you're very stressed right now. What you would want is their infrared sauna blanket. The sauna blanket works by raising your heart rate to that of physical exercise, so it burns calories while you relax. You can burn up to 600 calories in just one session. That's like a treadmill. Sweating helps flush out heavy metals and other toxins, and infrared heat and elevating your heart rate while relaxing releases endorphins. We all love those. It's easy to set up, heats up rapidly, and you can enjoy a session for 30-40 minutes while relaxing, reading, watching TV, or this terrible podcast, which I don't understand why people enjoy so much. Here's the kicker. Bone Charge ships worldwide in rapid time. It's made from vegan leather, and there's free shipping on every sauna blanket with no hidden costs. Even better, easy returns and exchanges. You get a 30-day trial and a 12-month warranty. Go to bonecharge.com/welcome and use coupon code WELCOME to save 15%. That's BONCHARGE.com/welcome. Use code WELCOME to save 15%. Bone Charge products are all HSA, FSA eligible, so that gives you tax-free savings up to 40%. Let's get back to the show. So what is going through your head when she sits down and she's just like what she said was just complete 101 stupidity?
Well, the way it's set up is that they go in turns. You start with students giving 10 minutes, and then the guest speakers give their 10 minutes. But there isn't actually a debate. So it's called the Oxford Union debate. All that happens is it's basically 6 people giving a speech, and then the students at the end vote. So there's not actually any back and forth, really. After she gave her speech, about, I don't know, 20% of the room or a quarter of the room left, because I was the last speech. They didn't introduce me as they didn't. So I kind of went into it like, okay, fine, don't worry about this. This is going to be filmed. Just smash out your speech. I spent a week. I cleared my diary. I spent a week working on that speech.
Hey guys, where are you going? Are you still in Mumford and Sons? You really want to hear this?
You know who I am.
Oh my God.
So then I was just like, just smash out the speech. And then the other thing was that I was so high on adrenaline that if you listen to my tone, it's like 14 minutes where I'm like high
Yes.
energy, which was, I should have slowed. I should have had a bit more up and down to it.
Yes.
That's to do with like, well, firstly, I'd never done it, but also just a lot of adrenaline and a lot of build up. That's kind of what's going on in my. I didn't sleep the entire night after because me and Melissa were discussing this. It's like and Melissa was there, and
Melissa Chen, who remains the most annoying guest I've ever had on the show, and therefore a great role model for me personally.
well, she speaks very highly of you, Michael.
Yeah, she is the most. It was everything about getting her on the show was annoying, and she had us redo the thumbnail. So I'm like, this is who I want to be when I grow up. I want to be this insufferable and yet still charming. It's amazing.
I'll pass on your best.
Yes.
We were both after it. We were like, what just happened? Because we lost the vote in the room by orders of magnitude. I think it was 170 to 60. So we completely lost the debate. But we knew that something weird had happened because of Pelosi's response, and we just couldn't. It maybe took me a week to process that. Everything.
I'm sorry, I can't get past you arguing with her and her looking at me like, "Who are you?"
Yeah. Not only doing that, she was going, "Who are you?" And then she was turning over her shoulder and looking at her chief of staff, going, "Who is he? Who is he?" The whole thing. I mean, to be fair, like, it's a bloody good question.
But do you think she said? Like, I'm not even joking. Do you think she said it in the sense of, "How is it I'm having to engage with this bozo," or was it more in the sense of, "Put this fucker in jail, like find him out and have consequences for him"?
I don't think it was why she's doing it. I think it was more like she was offended by the worldview I presented to her. Like it wasn't just a worldview. The worldview offended her. Like the worldview was she was outraged by it. She was squirming through the whole thing, and she's squirming at weird moments. And Melissa kept a record of those moments. Like, for example, when I said that the Hong Konger populist revolt was pro-democracy, she's actually been very good on Hong Kong, I'd note. For her, that was like, it's not populist. Like, oh, like she's like really like frustrated by this whole thing. I think she was offended by the worldview rather than me. I think it was what I was presenting to her was just. Have you seen anyone with Trump derangement syndrome?
Hold on, but let me interrupt because what you're speaking to makes a lot of sense and has been going on in America since the 70s. I talk about this in my book, Then You Write. There's a very famous story which is incorrect, and I'll tell you the incorrect version, the correct version. It's exactly what was happening to her. That's very interesting you said this. There was a New York Times film critic named New Yorker, I forget what it was, named Pauline Kael. And she is attributed to have said, in 1972, when Nixon won 49 out of 50 states, she goes, "I can't believe Nixon won. No one I know voted for him." And this supposed to speaks to this kind of insular bubble that media elites live in. Someone looked it up, and the actual thing she said is even worse. She says something to the effect of, "There's all these Nixon voters out there. I know they're out there. And sometimes when I'm in the movie theater, I can feel them sitting next to me." So there's this awareness of these things exist, and sometimes they're physically proximate to me. And this is something that is horrific, that I would be in the same room and not even know it. And that's clearly what was happening to her. It's like, this is my house. It's not a safe space for my ideas and my worldview. And there's a bell curve where you could go, this much to the right of me, this much to the left, but there's a broad consensus as to what's acceptable. And now this banjo boy is literally looking down at me. He's standing, I'm sitting, saying these things to my face in my space. How could this is not supposed to happen?
Yeah. I remember living in New York in 2016 at the time of the Trump election, and I was actually anti-Trump at that period. I went on a journey, let's say, after that. But I remember that period, even being anti-Trump. There were aspects of his foreign policy, like his criticism of NATO, that I thought was good and worth discussing. And I remember in conversations bringing up, what about this? What about that? And not only do people shut down, but even though I was not the person to bring up Trump, I was then accused of bringing up politics. It's very weird. I don't know if you remember this, but I at one point I was consciously don't bring up politics because they don't like it when you talk it, but they always would, my progressive friends. And then when I challenged the narrative, I was not just challenging the narrative, I was bringing up politics.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's so weird. It's like a delusion or a derangement, which
I don't think that's what it was. I think there's something called in-group signaling, right, where you have these visceral references, but then they're not meant to be taken seriously. That's just kind of, like how wolves howl, right? Like I howl, you howl, and we kind of get our group together. But then all of a sudden, now instead of howling, which is this visceral Trump sucks, now you're having a discussion. Well, that goes from howling to barking. It's like whoa, 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 whoa! Like we're all here, we all on the same team. Why are you now making it something to talk about as opposed to visceral, mindless in-group signaling?
this is actually a very ancient human phenomenon.
Oh yeah.
De Tocqueville writes about this in Democracy in America. He writes about a phenomenon where there are political ideas that are perfectly okay to talk about. And by the way, that it was okay to talk about Trump. Remember, he was on SNL. He hosted SNL. There was a period where it's like, okay, because he wasn't a threat.
Right.
Then something changed. Then something, it was you, how dare you even compliment one aspect of his foreign policy? And de Tocqueville writes in Democracy in America that there was this phenomena where there were political ideas that discussed and they were open to conversation and happily debated. And then at some indeterminable moment, there was a switch, and anyone who held the wrong opinion was treated like a cancer that needed to be rid of from the community and expelled from the community. This is deep in us.
Well, I'll give you an example that happened right now. Let's suppose I would sit here and say, I'm voting for RFK. I think our political parties are both corrupt. I don't want to give any more of my vote or my support to the Republicans or the Democrats. I don't think Trump should be in office. I don't think Biden certainly should be in office. And I think RFK is the way to bring us together, move this country forward. What am I? A Trump supporter. Like literally, you're laugh, but like people will tell you to your face.
That's how it is.
Everything I just said. Oh, you're a Trump supporter. Like it's this bizarre binary that unless, and here's another, I said this on I think it was Andrew Schultz's show, where if I sit here and tell you, I know this is not my view, but someone says this, Trump should never been in the White House. He kind of sucks. He's dumb. His views did more harm than good. Oh, you're a Trump supporter. Because unless you say Trump is the worst thing that's happened to America and everything he did is horrifically bad, you're basically a Trump supporter. It is so almost sublingual and primitive in its binary that it's useful to demonstrate to people that this kind of Enlightenment ideal of political discourse is fallacious, beyond fallacious.
Do you think that applies to RFK Jr.? So when people accuse you of being Trump, is that because they think what's the logic behind them?
Because if every vote for RFK could have been a vote for Biden. So by voting for, because they said this in 2016 when it was Hillary versus Trump, we had a candidate here named Jill Stein from the Green Party. They're it's just like the Greens there in the UK, far left, very anti-war, pro, just all the, this kind of Woodstock generation Green stuff. And she got, well, I don't know, I can't off the top of my head, 1% of the vote. And you would be told if you voted for Jill Stein, that was a vote for Trump, and that you knew it, that you're tacitly a Trump supporter. Those votes should have gone for Hillary.
Do you think that there's anything equivalent on the other side? Like, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but if you say, "Oh, I'd vote for Biden," are you immediately written off as a libtard or something? Do you see things both happening on the other side?
It is an asymmetry, but there's this concept here of a rhino, which is, if you supported Nikki Haley, you're basically a leftist, and they're not entirely wrong.
Why are they not entirely wrong?
Because she and the Biden administration are like hand in hand when it comes to the war machine. Right. She's not very big on pushing back on progressive culture, certainly not on budgetary issues. So it's like, what is your purpose here? Like, what are you doing? So I think that Liz Cheney was another example of this. Liz Cheney was a congresswoman from Wyoming, Dick Cheney's daughter. And the only thing she was interested in caring about and talking about is how Trump's the worst thing that's ever happened to America, which is perfectly fine if that's your opinion, but go join the Democratic Party then. Like what is your purpose here if your entire goal is to undermine the president and then the nominee. Like, you're not helping the party in any way, and you're going to argue that you're trying to help America, but like, when you're a politician, let's cut the shit. You're just upset that you've persona non grata in the new Republican Party.
Well, it ties back to the feeling I had at dinner with Pelosi and her team. They couldn't accept that RFK himself had an authentic, honest motivation for running. They had to immediately go to, like, why is he doing this? Again, it's like they can't accept anything prima facie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also speaks to how they work, though.
Maybe
Like,
maybe that's because they're just speaking really by themselves. What they're presenting isn't really what's going on, so they assume everyone else what they're presenting isn't really what's going on.
if they have a policy that's unpopular, they always think of it as a PR issue as opposed to policy issue. It's that the people aren't getting, or they're getting the wrong impression, or this is hurting us in the polls. Not like, wait a minute, maybe we're doing the wrong thing.
It's
It's never that.
arrogance. It's exact. I absolutely hate it. And Pelosi even made that case, which it was worse what she said. She didn't blame PR. She blamed. She said, "quote that she said that poor souls, if only they weren't." She used the word blocked by their. She used the word culture, and she used the word God. Then they would see that the democratic policy that they'd created was going to help them. The arrogance in her mind.
And but Winston, if a Republican had said this, they'd be accused of using racist dog whistles, right? The media would have said, "What do you mean by poor souls? We know who you're talking about." So it's just amazing. There's another asymmetry there where people can use this sort of language where if it's another side says it, it's like, oh, no, what they really mean is minorities. But she can say it and no one's going to call her on that. But the thing is, and I'm not going to get into this. She's not entirely wrong. There's lots of, in every culture, when you're poor, you're worried about putting food on the table, you're trying to hustle and like paying the rent. You don't have the time that you and I and some, people watching the show, some of them have to indulge in politics and have these kind of do the homework. You are going to be reacting viscerally to just commercials or like 5 minutes on TV. So in a sense, she's not entirely incorrect.
Yeah, I don't. My starting position is always I assume people are cleverer than cleverer than me. So this apply, let's say, to my podcast, or it's applied when I was a musician, is assume that the audience are smarter than you are, because they are. And so I actually don't. I think, yeah, of course, people like me and you, we're working media, although it's alternative media. We are on top of it, maybe more than most people, because we have a responsibility. It's our job. We're better at our job if we do so. But I do think people are smart, and I think that there's something about instincts that are not always bad. In fact, probably good. And so my starting position, and maybe this makes me a progressive, is that I assume the best in people. So
yeah, but you could be smart and you could be ignorant. Like, there's lots of things I know absolutely nothing about. There's lots of things you know absolutely nothing about, right? So my point is, a lot of these people, you might consider them perfectly smart. They just they haven't done their homework, and you can't expect them to, especially when they have so little time to devote to the issue.
Yeah, but that's Pelosi would be a great example, if you watch her speech at the Oxford Union, of someone who's highly educated and a complete moron. So you might say, oh, poor people or whatever, they don't have time to brush up on these things. Well, the people who do have time to brush up can equally come up with moronic takes and stupid takes. I don't think education or time is necessarily correlated with good decision making.
Oh, I agree, that's true, but I would push back a little bit, because her definition of a good decision making isn't something that's backed up by facts or truth. It's that which furthers her power, and she's been enormously successful in that. So it's kind of like, when people say survival of the fittest, this drives me crazy. Survival of the fittest. Oh, it's only the strongest survive. No, mice are very fit. Mosquitoes are very fit. It's what thrives in a given environment. So she's in a context where doing your homework and being smart, if anything, might be counterproductive, because you're going to get disconnected from the lowest common denominator, who you're trying to reach. It's much easier to persuade with these stupid little slogans And just like if you're with me, it's just a 2-step process. Present things as a binary, discredit the opposition, then you win. That's all it takes. So here's the binary: it's us or the ethno-nationalists. Then step 1, step 2, they're ethno-nationalists. You don't want to be that, right? Correct. Great, we win. Like, that's all it takes. So it's not sophisticated at all, but it's functional.
Quite, and she's been very successful at it for decades, and she's been rewarded for that functionality of that.
And she's not alone.
And she's not alone, which, I mean, and it's why politics doesn't attract the principled. Politics doesn't attract.
Right.
There's perfectly intelligent people and there's some principled people in politics, but it's very hard to have a long career if you're principled. Anyway. Yeah.
Hey folks, Michael Malice here. You might know me as a Twitter troll, terrible author, insufferable podcaster, but I'm also an underwear model, and the underwear that I model and wear every day is Sheath underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice, you get 20% off and you can be inside my pants. Why I love Sheath is they have special dual pouch technology for both parts of your male anatomy. It sounds weird. The first time I tried them on, I'm like, what is this? And now I literally wear them every day. The great thing about Sheath, it was developed by an Iraq war veteran. And overseas, it gets really, really hot. And Bobby decided, all right, what can I do to make sure I'm not suffering here in this heat? And thanks to his research, you can be comfortable in the comfort of your own home. It's great for cold weather. It's great for hot weather. It keeps you secure and comfortable. And there's something really exciting about going on a job interview, going on a date, doing a podcast, knowing that your underwear has you in its grip, nice and secure and comfortable. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off, and you can get one step closer to looking as much like a hunk as myself. Folks, traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat, which can lead to acne, to allergies, to stuffy noses, and it is gross. Miracle Made offers a full line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria and require 3 times less laundry. They're infused with silver, and that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, which leaves them staying cleaner and fresher 3 times longer. No more gross odors. And by using these silver-infused fabrics, which were inspired by NASA, the Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every night. They're very comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Miracle Made sheets are designed for your skin. Bacteria can clog your pores. It causes breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Here's all you got to do. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo Malice at checkout, you get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code Malice to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. Let me ask a quick question since you're over across the pond. Currently in the polls, Labor is up by 20 points over the Tories. This is historically unprecedented. We're looking at a Labor landslide that might reduce the Tories to under 100 seats, even bigger than what Tony Blair had when he got elected. What was that, 93, I believe, or 97, whichever one was. How bad is Sir Keir? Is he one of these kind of, what it seems to me, these gray bureaucrats that he'd be like somewhat of a moderate? Because obviously he's no Jeremy Corbyn, who is more of like an ideologue and a firebrand. Or how concerned are you that when Sir Keir almost certainly becomes prime minister, that shit's going to go to hell in a handbasket very quickly in the UK?
I would start by just pointing out that Rishi Sunak's been absolutely dreadful. Our current prime minister.
No shit.
Prime minister.
Yes.
He's
unelected.
Well, it doesn't quite work like that. We elect a party and we know who the party is.
But hold on. You elected the party. It was Boris Johnson. He resigned. Then the members of the party voted for his replacement, which was Liz Truss. Then she got driven from office, and now it's like, all right, we're just going to put this asshole in.
Yeah, but sorry, but just by comparison, assuming your audience is more American, where you vote for the president, right?
Right. Yeah.
You don't, in Britain, you don't vote for the prime minister. You vote for the party. You actually
but,
vote for your local MP, and then if they have a majority of MPs, they have
yeah, but my point is, Boris Johnson led the Tories during that campaign and won a landslide.
Yeah.
Liz Truss ran against Rishi within the party to find a replacement.
Yeah.
Then she got kicked out of office. Rishi was never a vote of any kind.
Right. So Rishi has been, let's go back to Rishi. He's been dreadful. He is a reversal back to the universalist, technocratic.
He's a Romney figure. He's a Mitt Romney figure. This kind of businessman who has not real big principles other than effective government.
He has no principles. Good luck trying to define anything that this guy represents. It's just not remotely clear. The only thing I can pick up is that he is hyper ambitious for himself individually.
Yes.
He has neither him nor Liz Truss seem to have, in the same way that Pelosi has no understanding of what happened in 2016. These Tories, Truss and Rishi Sunak, seem to have no understanding of why Boris won by the landslide that he won in 2019. And it's actually quite simple. And Boris won the Red War, a part of Britain that had been Labour for nearly a century. It's quite simple. It was to complete Brexit because Britain was voting against the universalist worldview. It was going back
the globalist.
The globalist.
Here we call the globalist, yes.
It was to control borders at that time, or rather, at the moment, we're at 700,000 net migrants a year. When we voted to leave the EU in 2016, we were at 300,000, 330,000 a year, right? And the second biggest reason, in my speech for Pelosi, I say the number one reason, according to polls, the famous poll is the Ashdown poll, the number one reason is sovereignty. The number two reason is controlled immigration. At that time, it was 300,000, and now it's 700,000 a year. So that's another thing. And the other thing that Boris got elected on was leveling up, which meant to bring up the North and the rest of the country by putting money towards that part of the money in the country into infrastructure, into the NHS, basically welfare-ish type program, which resonated with the British people because we like that. That's part of that's important part of it. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have just they couldn't tell you that. I would be surprised. I would wonder if their reaction to it would be like Pelosi reacting to my argument. So for me, Keir Starmer, my prediction is that he's kind of a bit like a continuation of Liz Truss and Rishi, not in necessarily, certainly not in tax. Or no, a better way of thinking it would probably be like Blair 2.0, but like with Blair over his shoulder a little bit. That's me. And I think he will be. I think he will be. He won't be better than Rishi. He might be slightly worse, but Britain's. Another thing for your listeners is you mentioned how Labour are going to win by landslide, but if you look at the polling, people are not leaving the Tories and going to Labour. Labour's kept the same sort of support. Those Tory voters are going to the Reform Party, which is a new populist party founded by Farage, although he's not actually running. It's led at the moment by Richard Tice. And they've gone up in the polls. I think they're at like between 10 and 15%.
Yep.
Or they're not going to vote.
Right.
So it's not Labour popularity going up. It's just Tories obliterated.
Yeah. Margaret Thatcher, who's right over my shoulder right there.
She's your girl, eh?
Cover the white pill. They asked her at one point, what do you think your biggest legacy is? And she said, Tony Blair. By which she meant taking the Labour Party from this quasi-Marxist, if not explicitly Marxist, hard left party to having them be this neoliberal thing where actual leftists, or actual hardcore leftists like Jeremy Corbyn, are going nuts because they're being silenced. And I do want to point out to something, and this drives conservatives crazy, how there's this idea in American discourse where the left is a monolith. Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton were the ones who shut up AOC and Bernie Sanders, respectively. They have done a far better job at silencing the left wing of the Democratic Party than the Republicans ever did. And it's really clear that here's another example that's just happened in the UK. Diane Abbott, who is my favorite by far, British politician. And I encourage people. I encourage people to get on the influence and watch Diane Abbott compilation videos on YouTube. You will have the best afternoon of your life. This is a woman who couldn't even dress herself. Not only did she wear 2 different shoes once to go vote, they're both for the left foot. She's just a national treasure. And she was a huge embarrassment for Labor. And under Sir Keir, she lost the whip. She got kicked out of the party. She was praised Mao. This woman is.
She said that Mao. She said on national television that Mao did more good than harm.
Yes. So the point is, it's Sir Keir who shut her up. It was not Rishi or Liz Truss or Boris. So these neoliberal leftists are far better at handling the socialists than the opposition ever is.
That's a really important point, and this is something I try and get at in my speech, is that a lot of people want to play a right-left paradigm, particularly in politics, and Pelosi was doing that, playing right and left, and she was doing that in the argument. She was saying the populists are the right. But I don't think it's like that, and I don't think the people are. And a great example of that is Bernie supporters. Wasn't it something like a quarter of Bernie supporters? No, it wasn't that much.
A significant number.
A quarter of Bernie supporters didn't support Hillary, and of that quarter, half of them voted for Trump, right?
Yeah, I was on a panel once with a prominent Democratic activist and talking head, and I said the hatred for Mitt Romney within the conservative circles it's very, very high. I'm like, is it analogous with you guys with them hating Bernie, people hating Hillary? She goes, it's far worse, because for them, she is the warmonger. Like, this is, government at its worst. This is the very basic thing we're against. Stop killing people. Stop taxing people and giving money to wealthy corporations to build weapons of murder. And she's Wall Street's candidate. She's like, we hate it. And it's very hard for conservatives to wrap their heads around this. And I'm not saying this is a significant majority of the Democratic Party. It's not that at all. But my point is, there's plenty of them who really hate Hillary even more than you do. And ask yourselves, if you're on the right, how much you hate Liz Cheney. And then you'll be able to understand a little bit. Folks, head over to malice.locals.com, where Winston will take questions from our supporters. Go ahead.
Can I finish the point, though?
Yes, of course, please.
What I want to make is that it's not a right-left paradigm. It's an up-down paradigm. It's elite versus the people, which is why you can see people moving right and left. Where the populist movement goes, again, forgive me, but if I'm opening up a can of worms here, but which direction the populist movement goes, whether it was Bernie or whether it's Trump, and which way it goes in the future, it's yet to be seen. But the point being is, people are more capricious in their ideas of where to go forward, but they probably agree with, generally, even if they're right or left, of who the elites are and who the elites aren't.
Well, that kind of speaks to both the North Korean point and my view, which is the masses without a leader are incoherent. And it's just this populism in and of itself we saw this is happening right now in Italy. There was something called the 5-Star Movement, and it was founded by a comedian. I forget his name, Giuseppe Beppi or something weird like that. And they were just like, the elites suck, F both these parties. And okay, they had a very valid point. And they got a significant portion of the vote, and they got into government. It's like, all right, now what? Well, when you govern, you're really going to be governing like one of the two parties. There's not anywhere really else to go. Maybe you take some from column A, from column B, but you're not going to have this innovative solutions often. And they lost a big part of their support, because it's one thing to be like, correctly, both these parties suck, they corrupt, they don't care about us. It's nothing to be like, great, how are you going to govern? It is going to be, okay, we're going to have more taxes or less taxes. I've heard both those. More welfare programs or less. I've heard both those arguments too. So whatever issue you take, it's going to be something that is not new at all, that has as its place within the respective center right or center left parties. And now I'm going to encourage people to go to malice.locals.com so you can have questions from Malice supporters, the masses. So before we cut, there's a question. I had Chrissy Mayer on the show a couple of weeks ago, and her father had recently been murdered. So I'm sure that's not what you're cheerful about. Yeah. And we talked about that at length. It was a very excellent episode. And I have a question for you that I asked her, which is, what advice would you have to someone who has gone through a trauma? Because I'm sure if you could have had a time machine and go back to March 2021, right? There are certain things that you could have done differently, or certain things you should have known. And everyone listening to this is going to get that phone call or have that sudden moment where your life changes forever. And it's useful to hear from people who've experienced it, like, all right, like, have some kind of words of wisdom in that moment.
Well, that's such a tough question. That's too difficult a question. But certainly for me, my faith in the scripture has been a serious a rock for me in the choppy seas, and I don't know. I don't think I could have done it without that. Yeah, that's such a difficult question. I also not sure if I'm in a position to advise on trauma, but I would say this. These are the important lessons from my experience, particularly with the book stuff and the tweet, and back in 2021, is I quoted Job earlier. Lord giveth, Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That you can have everything taken away from you, as you know, the Russian Revolution or whatever it is that might, or just the vicissitudes of life or whatever that might be. But hang on to your soul, because you can't get that back easily. Hang on to your dignity, because you can't get that back easily. And those are the things that I initially lost when I apologized, that I was so desperate to get back, because it was not only humiliating, but it was degrading, those things having lost. And then the only other thing is that tell the truth and play the chips as they lie. And in the short run, that's painful, but in the long run, you just can't regret anything if you do that. But it's not quite an answer to the question about trauma, but it's
Here's one I learned, and let me see if you agree. It feels worse than it really is. You think it's the end of the world, you think you're dead, you think you're nothing, and you're not. It sucks, but you in a few years you will look back and be able to talk about it without bouncing off the walls. And I think that's the tough one in that moment, to have that perspective. At least for me, it was to be like, I know it feels like it's the end of the world. I'm coming to you from the future. It's not.
That's great advice.
I mean, would you not agree? Would that have been the key?
Absolutely. Well, and another thing is, I would say that I would say that to my old self, but
Yeah.
That wouldn't be that much of a conciliation to my old self, because if before me, or before when you're in that situation, the thing about trauma is the future suddenly becomes total chaos. It becomes black as the night, and you don't know which way forward.
Right.
And so you don't even have necessarily the imagination to see that.
Yes.
And that's what's so affecting, and that's what can get the better of you. So it's not that helpful to hear that, because you're dealing with another, with so many things at once. But you are right. I agree with you.
Winston, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this episode?
I like going into a bit of Soviet stuff. That was quite fun. What was your favorite part, Michael?
You're fucking up my outro.
Stream your favorite drama movies and TV shows on Pluto TV, all for free. Watch all your favorite crime dramas like CSI and Blue Bloods, or your favorite action dramas like Breaking Bad on Stories by AMC or The Walking Dead universe. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of drama movies and TV shows. Download Pluto TV on all your favorite devices for free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.